The ocean beneath them was deeper than any of them wanted to admit. Black water stretched endlessly below the recovery vessel as heavy rain struck the deck through the night. Captain Elias stood beside the control screens watching the descent numbers slowly change. Nobody spoke much anymore. The deeper they went, the quieter the crew became. The wreck had been discovered only 6 days earlier by a passing research drone. No official records mentioned a ship ever sinking in this location. That alone was enough to make everyone uneasy. But the money offered for the recovery mission was impossible to refuse, especially for a crew already drowning in debt. Inside the submarine, dim blue lights reflected across nervous faces. Mira checked the sonar system again. Still nothing except empty water and static. Jonas tried to laugh. Maybe we'll find pirate gold down there. Nobody answered him. The submarine continued descending into darkness. Above them, sunlight vanished completely. Below them, the ocean looked endless. The pressure outside groaned against the metal hull. Then the sonar beeped sharply. Everyone turned instantly. A moving shape appeared beside the wreck marker, large, fast, then gone. Mira frowned at the screen. That's impossible. Elias moved closer. What did you see? I don't know. The signal flickered violently before disappearing into static again. Jonas forced a smile. Probably a whale. But his voice sounded uncertain. The submarine lights finally revealed the wreck below. A massive ship resting silently on the ocean floor, covered in darkness. Waiting for them, the wreck looked untouched. That was the first thing that felt wrong. Most ships lost this deep were broken apart by pressure and time. But this one stood upright on the ocean floor, almost perfectly intact. Its metal walls were covered in rust, yet the structure itself looked strangely preserved. The submarine circled slowly around the ship. Its lights moved across shattered windows and dark corridors hidden behind thick glass. Nobody inside spoke for several seconds. Mira finally whispered, "This place should not look this clean." Captain Elias agreed silently. There were no signs of impact, no giant tear across the hull, no evidence of an explosion. It looked less like a shipwreck and more like a ship abandoned in the dark. Jonas pointed toward the side of the vessel. The name's gone. The metal where the ship's name should have been looked deliberately scraped away. Not damaged, removed. Elias frowned. Who would erase a ship's identity? No one answered. The submarine drifted closer to the deck. Their lights suddenly caught long scratches running across the outer hull. Deep marks, parallel, far too large to come from normal equipment. Mira stared at them carefully. "Those are fresh," Jonas laughed nervously. "Fresh? We're 6,000 meters underwater." But nobody else laughed. One scratch stretched nearly 15 feet across the metal surface, like something had dragged claws along the ship. Then another sound echoed softly through the submarine. A dull, metallic knock. Everyone froze. Knock, knock, knock. It came from somewhere inside the wreck. Slow, rhythmic, almost human. Nobody moved after the knocking started. The sound echoed softly through the submarine walls. Knock, knock, knock. 3 slow strikes. Then silence again. Jonas stared toward the dark ship outside the glass. "You all heard that, right?" Mira kept her eyes fixed on the wreck. Her hands tightened around the control panel. "That came from inside." Captain Elias said nothing for several seconds. Then he grabbed the radio microphone. "Surface team, do you copy?" Only static answered him. The connection above had become weak during the descent, but now it sounded worse, much worse. Another knock echoed through the water, this time louder, closer. The submarine lights swept across the ship's lower deck. Broken hallways stretched endlessly behind cracked windows. Darkness swallowed everything deeper inside. Then the sound came again. Knock, knock, knock. Mira swallowed nervously. "It sounds like a pattern." Jonas tried forcing another joke. "Maybe someone's asking to come out." Nobody reacted. Captain Elias slowly opened the equipment locker. "Prepare the dive suits." Jonas looked at him immediately. "You're serious? We came here for answers." The crew stepped into heavy diving gear in complete silence. Breathing systems hissed softly as helmets locked into place. Outside the submarine window, the wreck waited motionless beneath the ocean. Elias opened the lower hatch. Dark, freezing water surrounded them instantly. The divers moved carefully across the ship's outer deck. Every flashlight beam disappeared into blackness after only a few feet. The knockings suddenly stopped, completely. The silence that followed felt worse. Jonas turned slowly toward the hallway entrance leading inside the wreck. Fresh water drifted outward from the darkness, as if something inside had just moved. The crew entered the wreck slowly. Their flashlight beams shook across narrow hallways covered in rust and sea growth. Every step echoed through the silent ship. Water drifted around them in slow clouds as they moved deeper inside. Captain Elias stayed in front. Mira followed close behind him while Jonas checked the motion tracker constantly. The signal kept flickering. Something was interfering with it. The deeper they went, the stranger the wreck became. Some rooms looked completely destroyed. Others looked untouched. One dining hall still had chairs standing neatly beside tables. A coffee cup rested on the floor as if someone had dropped it moments earlier. Jonas stopped near a hallway wall. There's no way this ship has been down here for decades. Then Myra's flashlight landed on something ahead. A large metal door hidden beneath the lower engine section. Unlike the rest of the ship, the door looked newer, cleaner. Its surface carried almost no rust at all. Heavy locks covered the edges. Strange warning symbols had been scratched deeply across the metal. Elias moved closer. "What is this?" Mira brushed debris away from the center of the door. Faded letters slowly appeared beneath the dirt. Restricted access. Jonas looked uneasy. Why would a ship have something like this hidden underwater? Before anyone answered, the radio suddenly crackled alive. The voice from the surface sounded distorted through static. "Open the chamber!" Elias grabbed the radio immediately. "Repeat that." Static hissed loudly. Then the voice returned. "Document everything inside." The signal died again. Mira stared at the sealed chamber. "I really don't think opening that is a good idea." But Elias already reached for the cutting tools. The mission had one purpose: find what the wreck was hiding. The metal torch ignited brightly beneath the ocean darkness. As sparks burst across the sealed door, something heavy moved somewhere deep inside the ship. Art 5, the sound came from below them, a deep metallic groan that vibrated through the wreck itself. The crew froze instantly. Jonas turned toward the dark hallway behind them. "Tell me that was the ship settling." Nobody answered. Captain Elias continued, cutting through the chamber door while bright sparks drifted into the water. The old metal slowly gave way. Then suddenly the lights inside the wreck flickered on. Every hallway around them flashed red for a split second. Then darkness returned. Mira stepped backward immediately. That's impossible. The wreck had no power. It should have been dead for decades. But a second later, the lights flickered again. This time they stayed on. Dim red emergency lights glowed deep through the corridors. Long shadows stretched across the walls. Somewhere in the distance, machinery hummed faintly back to life. Jonas whispered, "No! No, no!" The chamber door finally broke open with a loud crack. Freezing black water rushed outward from inside. Elias pulled the door wider with both hands. Their flashlights revealed a narrow corridor descending deeper beneath the ship. The walls inside looked different, cleaner, more modern, like another structure hidden inside the wreck itself. Then Mira saw it, a tall figure standing at the far end of the corridor, perfectly still, watching them. Her breathing became sharp inside the helmet. "There's someone down there." Jonas aimed his flashlight toward the figure. The light flickered violently. For 1 second, the shape looked almost human. Then it moved suddenly into darkness, fast, far too fast. Jonas stumbled backward in panic. What the hell was that? Before Elias could answer, a loud scream exploded through the radio. The crew spun around instantly. One of the divers behind them had vanished. Only his flashlight remained floating slowly in the water. The beam pointed toward the ceiling, and across the metal above them, fresh claw marks appeared one by one. Nobody spoke after the diver disappeared. The only sound inside the wreck was their heavy breathing. Jonas stared at the floating flashlight, drifting slowly through the hallway. He was right behind me. Captain Elias grabbed the radio immediately. "Daniel, respond now." Only static answered. Mira aimed her flashlight toward the ceiling again. The claw marks stretched across the metal like something had crawled above them. Long, deep, fresh. Then another sound echoed faintly through the corridor ahead, a voice, weak and broken. The crew followed it carefully into one of the lower cabins. The room looked untouched by time. Dust floated through the water around old equipment and overturned chairs. At the center of the cabin sat a tape recorder sealed inside a metal container. Its small red light was still blinking. Jonas whispered, "That thing still works." Mira pressed the play button slowly. Static filled the room. Then a man's exhausted voice emerged through the speakers. "This is Captain Warren of recovery vessel Orpheus." The recording crackled loudly. "If anyone finds this ship, do not open the lower chamber." The crew exchanged nervous looks. The captain's voice continued shakily. "We brought something aboard from the trench." A loud metallic bang interrupted the recording. The man sounded terrified now. "It was alive!" Another bang echoed in the background, closer this time. "We locked it below the engine section, but it keeps." The recording suddenly cut into screaming. Men shouting, gunfire, metal tearing apart. Then one final sentence came through the static. "It learns from us." The tape ended. Silence filled the cabin again. Nobody moved. Then Jonas slowly raised his flashlight toward the cabin wall. Words had been scratched deeply into the metal beside them. "Don't let it reach the surface." The message on the wall changed everything. Nobody wanted to continue the mission anymore. Jonas stepped backward immediately. "We're leaving, right now." Captain Elias kept staring at the scratched warning. His face looked pale beneath the helmet light. Mira grabbed his arm. "Elias, we need to go." Before he answered, the motion tracker beeped loudly. All three of them turned toward the hallway outside the cabin. A single signal moved slowly toward them through the wreck. One life sign, human-sized. Jonas raised his flashlight with shaking hands. The footsteps outside sounded uneven, dragging, closer every second. Then a figure appeared in the doorway. Daniel, the missing diver. His suit was damaged badly across the chest. One oxygen tube hung loose beside him. His helmet visor was cracked, but somehow he was still alive. Jonas rushed toward him. "Where were you?" Daniel did not answer. Water dripped slowly from his suit as he stood completely motionless. Mira noticed his hands trembling violently. "Daniel?" His breathing sounded wrong through the radio. Slow, wet, almost choking. Captain Elias stepped closer carefully. "What happened to you?" Daniel finally lifted his head. His eyes looked unfocused behind the cracked visor. For several seconds he simply stared at them. Then he spoke quietly. "It knows we opened the door." Jonas frowned. "What knows?" Daniel ignored the question completely. "It was sleeping." His voice sounded distant, like he was barely aware of them anymore. Mira felt cold fear crawl through her chest. "Daniel, where did you go?" He slowly turned toward the dark hallway behind him. "It's still here." Suddenly, every light inside the wreck shut off at once. Total darkness swallowed the corridor. Then something moved fast through the water beside them. Jonas screamed first. His flashlight swung wildly through the darkness as something rushed past them underwater. A powerful force slammed against the hallway wall nearby. Metal bent loudly. Captain Elias grabbed Daniel and pulled him backward into the cabin. "Seal the door." Mira forced the damaged cabin door shut while emergency locks clicked into place. Outside, something scraped slowly across the metal corridor. The sound was sharp, deliberate, like claws dragging along steel. Nobody inside the cabin moved. Their breathing filled the darkness. Then the emergency lights flickered back on. Dim red light covered the room again. Jonas looked completely terrified now. "What the hell is out there?" Daniel sat silently against the wall. Water pooled beneath him while he stared at nothing. Mira noticed something strange on his neck, dark veins spreading slowly beneath his skin. She stepped closer carefully. "Daniel!" He suddenly grabbed her wrist hard. His grip felt freezing cold through the suit. "It watches from outside." Mira pulled away immediately. Captain Elias moved toward the cabin window. The thick glass looked out into endless black ocean surrounding the wreck. For several seconds there was nothing there. Then a pale shape drifted slowly past the glass, human-shaped, thin, far too long. Its white eyes reflected directly into the cabin light before disappearing again into darkness. Jonas backed away in horror. "No!" The motion tracker exploded with signals, multiple movements surrounding the wreck, fast, circling them. Then the support vessel radio suddenly crackled alive. A terrified voice screamed through static. "Something is on the hull!" Loud banging erupted from above them. Metal groaned violently somewhere outside the ship. The radio cut out mid-scream. Silence returned instantly. Then the cabin lights began failing one by one, and outside the window, more pale figures appeared in the dark water. The pale figures surrounded the wreck silently. Their thin bodies drifted through the black water outside the cabin windows. Some moved slowly. Others darted unnaturally fast through the darkness before vanishing again. Jonas could barely breathe anymore. There's more than one. Captain Elias tried the surface radio repeatedly. Nothing answered except static. The support vessel above was gone completely. Mira checked the submarine systems from the portable console. Her face turned pale instantly. "We've lost external power." "What does that mean?" Jonas asked. "It means something outside is tearing through the lines." A loud impact shook the wreck again. Dust burst from the ceiling overhead. Daniel suddenly began whispering softly to himself in the corner. "They don't want us leaving." Mira looked at him carefully. "Who?" Daniel slowly lifted his eyes toward her. "The ones below." Another violent crash echoed somewhere outside the hull. Then the emergency lights dimmed further. Oxygen warnings flashed across their helmets immediately. Captain Elias checked the numbers. His expression hardened. "We have less than 3 hours." Fear spread through the cabin instantly. Jonas shook his head. No, we leave now." Elias nodded once. They opened the cabin door carefully and moved back into the corridor. The wreck looked different now. The red lights flickered constantly above them. Water dripped from broken pipes. Somewhere deep inside the ship, something screamed. The sound barely sounded human. The crew hurried toward the submarine docking bay. Then Mira stopped suddenly. Fresh footprints covered the flooded floor ahead, bare human footprints, leading toward their submarine, but none of them had removed their diving boots. Jonas stared at the tracks in horror. The wet footprints continued across the floor and straight onto the ceiling above them. Nobody looked away from the ceiling. The wet footprints stretched upside down across the metal above them, step after step, disappearing deeper into the wreck. Jonas whispered shakily, "That's not possible." Then a loud alarm echoed through the corridor. The submarine docking bay was losing pressure. Captain Elias forced himself to move. "Keep going." The crew hurried through the flooded hallways while red emergency lights flashed around them. Every shadow now felt alive. Every sound made them turn in panic. As they passed the old communications room, Mira noticed a metal cabinet hanging open. Papers floated slowly through the water nearby. One folder carried a military warning stamp across the front, classified. Elias grabbed the documents quickly. "We take this." Jonas looked at him like he was insane. "We don't have time for papers." But Elias already opened the file while they moved. The documents revealed photographs of the wreck before it sank. The ship's original name was Orpheus, a deep-sea biological research vessel operating in secret decades earlier. Mira turned another page. Pictures showed a strange pale organism recovered from an unexplored trench deep beneath the Atlantic Ocean. At first, it looked small, almost human. But each photograph showed it growing larger, more distorted. Another report described violent behavior among the crew soon after recovery. Hallucinations, paranoia, disappearances. Jonas stopped reading suddenly. There, a final photograph showed the original crew standing together on deck. But one crew member looked exactly like Daniel. Same face, same eyes. The date beneath the image was from 43 years earlier. Mira slowly turned toward Daniel, walking behind them. His expression remained completely empty. Then he smiled for the first time, a cold, unnatural smile. "I told you," he whispered softly. "It learns from us." Jonas stepped backward immediately. "That's impossible." He grabbed the old photograph from Mira and stared at it again. The man standing beside the original crew looked exactly like Daniel. Not similar, exactly the same. Daniel watched their fear calmly. Water dripped from his damaged suit while the red emergency lights flickered across his face. Captain Elias spoke carefully. "Who are you?" Daniel tilted his head slowly. For a moment he almost looked confused by the question. Then he answered softly, "I don't remember anymore." The hallway suddenly shook violently. A deafening screech echoed somewhere deep beneath the wreck. Metal walls bent inward around them. Whatever was outside was getting closer. Mira noticed Daniel's skin changing now. Dark veins spread higher across his neck and jaw. His eyes reflected light strangely inside the helmet visor, almost pale white. Jonas pointed his flashlight directly at him. "You were never missing, were you?" Daniel smiled again. A wider smile this time. It showed me the trench. Captain Elias grabbed Jonas before panic exploded completely. We get to the submarine now. The crew moved quickly through the collapsing corridors. Behind them, Daniel walked slowly and silently, like he already knew they could not escape. As they reached the docking bay, Mira suddenly froze. The submarine hatch stood open. Water drifted slowly inside. Something had entered it already. Jonas nearly broke down. We're dead. Then Daniel stopped moving. His head turned slowly toward the black ocean outside the docking chamber windows. The others followed his stare. A massive shape moved outside the wreck, far larger than before. Its pale body slid silently through the darkness surrounding the ship. Long limbs dragged across the outer hull. Dozens of white eyes opened slowly beneath the water. Daniel whispered almost lovingly. It came back for us. The creature circled the wreck slowly. Its enormous body moved through the darkness like something ancient rising from the bottom of the ocean. White eyes covered its pale skin, some human, some not. The entire docking bay groaned as the outer hull bent inward under pressure. Jonas backed away in terror. There's no way out. Captain Elias grabbed the emergency flare gun from the submarine wall locker. We're leaving now. Mira climbed inside the damaged submarine first and powered the systems desperately. Most controls were dead. Warning alarms screamed across every screen. Outside the windows, the massive creature drifted closer. Its long limbs wrapped slowly around the wreck itself. Daniel stood motionless near the open hatch, watching it, almost waiting for it. Then he turned toward the crew one final time. You should left the door closed. Suddenly the emergency lights failed completely. Darkness swallowed the bay. A violent crash exploded against the hull. The creature attacked. Metal tore apart around them. Water rushed into the chamber instantly. Jonas screamed as something grabbed him from the darkness outside. His flashlight vanished into black water. Then he was gone. Captain Elias sealed the submarine hatch while Mira forced the engines online. The submarine launched upward violently through collapsing debris. Behind them, the wreck disappeared beneath clouds of darkness and twisted metal. Something enormous followed briefly beneath the submarine during the ascent, keeping pace with them, watching. Then suddenly it vanished back into the deep. Hours later, the submarine finally surfaced beside a rescue vessel. Only Mira and Captain Elias remained alive. Rescue crews pulled them aboard immediately. Nobody spoke during the entire recovery. The ocean behind them looked calm again, silent, as if nothing had happened below. Then one medic noticed Captain Elias whispering quietly to himself while staring into the dark water. Over and over again, it followed us up.